do I now have an entire fucking sleeve of tattoos. The dumb bitch even called it her leash. What the fuck am I supposed to do? Plus, if she has superpowers, how the fuck am I supposed to deny her little challenge game, which I was so stupid to say yes to? What do you think? How the fuck did I get here? Huh. Well, I don't got all the answers. But I know we are all parts of Rice's brain. You, me, Lucy. Lucy? Yeah, that's that evil chick's name. Lucy. Anyway, you should probably keep on reviewing the webcomics for the time being. We'll see what we can find out in the meantime. So, where do you hide your porn? Fine, but what comic? I got just the thing. So what exactly is this jack shit? I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything, and I'm gonna do the biggest taboo a reviewer can do and point your attention to these things here at the bottom. Do you see these reviews? Read them, cause they are by far the funniest, most entertaining thing about this webcomic. Oh yeah, I went there. And oh look, an old friend writes a review too. You can't deny the credibility from someone who earns money by drawing the pictures for stories where a unicorn fucks a family, then eats the family. Then while inside the stomach of the unicorn, the family fucks. Then the family turns to poop. Then the unicorn poops out the poop, and then the unicorn fucks the poop. The comic Jack is written by David Hopkins and started the 1st of March 2001. It is one of the most controversial webcomics I've been asked to review, and most people even wrote to me and suggested this comic in hope that it would change my thoughts on furry comics in general. I am more than willing to be proven that furry comics is the hypest shit ever, but do not use Jack as an example of a good furry comic. The thing that people love about this comic is that it has balls that painfully few comics are brave enough to drag around, and it's not afraid to use them. And that the comic handles emotions and drama better than many other webcomics. However, just because it shows you rough imagery and controversial situations doesn't make it ballsy. There's a hard thin line between being ballsy and just being plain out controversial. That the comic shows what's this? A dog? That the comic shows you a dog shooting up a school, clearly copying the Columbine High shooting, to make it extra ballsy, isn't a sign of the comic being brave. It is just controversial. If it was brave, it would try and justify his actions. But this is just showing you horrible imagery. I'm not saying you can't be controversial, but do not fucking confuse it with being brave. As for the emotional parts... Are you serious? Are you fucking serious? This is what goes as good drama these days. Yeah, I totally wept my heart out when this dude was crying his heart out for 3 whole frames, and then, the very next frame, calm as a breeze. Need I remind you that this is just the introduction speech? We haven't even begun to touch the comic yet. Okay, before we do anything else, allow this humble Dane to teach you some English. There is a short for they are. There is a form of the possessive case of they used as an attributive adjective. Are you with me so far? Your is short for you are. Your is a form of the possessive case of you used as an attributive adjective. Now don't let me catch this shit again. I'd be fucking ashamed if someone came from England and tried to teach me how to spell in my own language. Fucking Christ. So what about the actual story? Jack is a collection of stories all centered around dying, and Jack, who is sort of like the Grim Reaper and the manifestation of wrath. Already I'm having a problem with this. Yeah, David, I also read The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. I also watched Final Destination. I also enjoyed the part where the plane got destroyed and people were holding on for dear life. But I digress. To return to what I was talking about before, having wrath as the Grim Reaper makes no fucking sense. Death doesn't give a shit about you. Death doesn't care whether you are 4 or 94. It doesn't care whether you're good or evil or if you deserve it or not. Frankly, Death is like an old man without his hearing aid with a huge lawnmower. So already the entire premise is stupid. It is even made all the more dumb when out of fucking left field, the comic starts cracking jokes that are both horrible and unredeemably unfunny. Like at one point, you may be reading how a group of people have been damned to hell for all of eternity, and then in the very next frame, you're supposed to have a laugh because a guy has been turned into a fucking hat. It'd be like watching The Green Mile, and just when it's the most sad, Tom Hanks starts doing the Harlem Shake. I won't bullshit you and say everything about this comic is shit. Actually, there are once or twice some very good and interesting stories, but usually they're ended in such a bad way that it forfeits the good stuff that happened up to that point. Frankly, the comic handles its short stories with about as much care as pushing an old woman in a wheelchair down a flight of stairs. But where the hell did that come from? Alright, here's the thing. We're making a story that takes roots in something that has happened since the dawn of time, i.e. death and hell. You have got to make it seem like it's being done almost like a machine. This shit has happened for more than 2,000 years, so the moment you show that it is easy to fuck up as soon as you show a hint of emotion, it loses all credibility. Let me give you an example. In this story, a dude walks into an office and starts killing random people. The dead people are then in the afterlife talking with Jack Death about how they can take revenge on this dude. Eventually Jack Death caves in and tells them they can do it if they just believe.
Believe it! Believe it! Believe it! Believe it! Believe it!
They then force the shooter to bring his shotgun to his own face and kill himself. Now, where's my problem with this? Well, it should be fairly obvious. Why hasn't this happened more frequently? If death shows empathy, and if you can affect the real world to such a degree once you're dead, why haven't we seen more of shit like this? 'Cause they just didn't believe enough. The comic's premise is harsh, I'll give it that, but it is not a well-written story. The comic is littered with one-dimensional characters, unbelievable plots, some even draw magic abilities out of their ass, and the worst offense? Well, you'll have to wait till we reach the character segment to hear that. But again, credit where it's due. David is a very creative writer. I honestly believe he could do much better than this horrible, horrible comic. One last thing. The thing about drama in a story is that it needs to be done in a specific way. Let me point your attention to these two. You've seen these two before, I'm sure of it, but do you know the significance of them? Want it or not, I'm gonna school you. The masks each represent a muse. The happy mask is Talia, and the sad mask is Melpomene. They act as a generic representation of comedy and tragedy, and have ever since the old Greek times been considered the symbol of drama. Now, why is that? Well, because drama needs just that. It needs the good as well as it needs the bad. It needs the sadness as well as the happiness, and it needs the comedy as much as the tragedy. Let's look at Scrubs as an example of this. The reason why the sad scenes work so great in this series is because there is always a sort of uncertainty of what will happen. Will the patients they are trying to save live or die, for example? And because you've been experiencing so much comedy, the tragedy hits you much harder in comparison. The scene played to How to Stay Alive may or may not make me cry now and then. Jack, on the other hand, doesn't have a single letter of comedy in it. It may try, but it fails. Everything is angsty and moody, and you eventually simply stop caring when people die, cause the moment you are introduced to them, you know they are going to die eventually. So for those reviewers who say that Jack has plenty of drama, well... I think I finally found out one of my main problems with furry comics. It is that when I see a comic with talking animals, well, then I see a comic with talking animals. I think furry lovers, on the other hand, simply sees humans. So, while they're simply expecting something from the story completely unrelated to the fact that they are talking animals, I, on the other hand, keep trying to understand what the significance is with them being animals. And once I've done that, I try to understand why everyone is trying to fuck everyone. Jack's art is unique, but rather sketchy and minimalistic. I, however, am impressed with the way certain things are made and shown. You will often see the strips colored in a gritty style that looks like it has been colored with colored crayons. Which is strangely good. Plus, the style fits the story perfectly with how gritty it is, and David even goes to great lengths to show Hell's environment, to give us a feel of how it is. Do you remember how I became yours? Yeah, me too, unfortunately. In that review, I mentioned how I would personally discourage crying all the time. Crying is the easiest and often the cheapest way of showing someone is distressed or sad. I even read somewhere that actors have an easier time fake crying than they have with what I like to call the silent cry. Sounds like the name of an emo rock band, I know. The silent cry is where you can tell the character normally would cry, but isn't, due to various reasons. Putting up a strong front, the emotion is too strong for crying, stuff like that. In Jack, the moment anyone is distressed, even the slightest bit, you can see the tears welling up in their eyes. Yes, it does convey the feelings, but that's because the comic uses extremes. People are either really happy, really sad, really angry, or really confused in their expressions. Here is a fun little thing you can do when reading a comic to spot a good artist. See if you can find an emotion that conveys two small feelings at the same time, like nervous curiosity or annoyed confusion. Plus, David, my friend, if you want to put yourself in the comic, that is a-okay. If you want to show you and your girlfriend being lovey-dovey, that is nice and cute. Just, please don't let us see this. Please. The difference between this and, say, one of the characters' dissolved, chewed up limb dick is that in the story it's meant to be grotesque. Here, well, I don't know what these guys are into. Yeah, girl, swing them ballin' fist chopped up long ass titties in my face, yeah. Do it, yeah. Now, here is my biggest problem with the art. Are you ready? The characters are hard to tell apart, and sometimes it's near impossible to tell what is going on. Like we've discussed before, these are sins when it comes to a comic, because the moment you lose the reader till they catch on again, that part of the story is lost to them. Especially the girls all look very much alike. It's like the same skeleton has been used for everyone, but the hair and colors are slightly different. And when the comic for the most part is black and white, well, then all you have to go on is the hair. Which eventually just makes you go,
Who are you people and where's my horse?
All in all, the art is less than spectacular, but not outstandingly bad. What really earns the comic some points, however, is the coloring that is actually pretty good compared to the art. The art gets better, but at strip 3000, it still only reaches an okay. Boy, oh fucking boy, where the fuck do I begin? Normal script build-up would sort of demand that I take the worst for last, to sort of make a build-up, but when the worst is the closest that this comic has to a protagonist Jack, I'm willing to make some exceptions. Let's pretend the comic is this boat, that gets worse and worse the more problem comes forth. At this point it's a raggedy raft. It'll get you where you want, but only just barely. Alright, and here comes the character Jack. Nothing with Jack works. He is the embodiment of wrath, yet you hardly ever see him angry. He keeps being butthurt about the people who die, even though he should be used to it by now. He, without trying, manages to find a loophole to save people from hell, and, my favorite, he decides to fight against heaven and hell, more or less, to save the soul of a high schooler because he, and I hope you're sitting down, cries a lot. Yep. That's all it takes. Remember, when you die, if you want to go to heaven but end up in hell, just be really butthurt about it. I'm sure none of the other billion people in hell have a single complaint of living the rest of their existence out in constant torment. I didn't think I'd ever say this, but Jack is not a good death. Like I mentioned before, when shit is this old, you need to make it seem almost automatic, or at the very least, make Dev seem like he enjoys his work. This shit just doesn't fly. But Riser, it's to make him a tortured protagonist. Again, if all he does is cry, it doesn't portray him as much as tortured, it's just a massive crybaby. Are you seeing where I'm going with this? Next up is FNAR. Seriously, what the fuck? Really? What the actual fuck? You have a comic which is built upon being gritty, graphic, horrible and depressing, and then you got a little cutesy little shit walking around in a girl sailor suit wanting to give hugs and cause hijinks for no other reason than it being cute. I can't even begin to list all the reasons why that doesn't work. So, not only does this little asshole have a name that sounds like a sound that comes out when you step on a goat, but he too serves to ruin the entire comic. And now for the one that fucking pisses me off. The women. Yeah. Just every fucking woman in this comic. David, put your fucking pen down, stop writing or drawing or whatever, and listen the fuck up. My words may not bear much weight, seeing I'm only a 23-year-old Dane with a little over 500 subscribers on YouTube, so allow me to have Lynn fucking Kara tell you what's up.
I do not have the time, and neither do you, audience, for me to give a lengthy diatribe on why using rape or any other kind of a sexual assault in a fictional story can be a really bad idea. However, I will link to someone smarter than me on the subject and read an insightful little bit. Take a good look at your story. Why do you think rape is what you need for it to progress? Is there something else that could fill the same function? Unless you have a damn good reason to include rape in a story, you probably shouldn't. Using sexual assault as a motivation in a box or an equivalent trope will do nothing but steal credibility and respect from a really serious, really important subject. Plus, you'll look like a twit. And that is what is happening here.
Every woman in this comic gets raped or is threatened with rape. The very fucking moment you throw rape around this loosely, you lose all your respect as a writer. Rape isn't just something that happens to women. It is a horrible crime. If you want rape in a comic, you better fucking address it some way or another. If you just have it in there because you want to give the reader the sick satisfaction of imagining that particular character being yipped or whatever the fuck you call it, then you are as sick and shallow as the sick fucks you're trying to appeal to. And if it's just there to make it seem extra gritty or horrible, then there are thousands of other alternatives. You got to work to deserve to put in rape in a comic, and you, sir, you do not deserve it, and you deserve throwing it around so casually even less. The premise is a free. It is rather mind-boggling how such a great idea can be executed so horribly. Some of the short stories are good, but they are like finding a needle in a haystack. I hate to say it, but I believe that if this comic had been in the hands of a better writer, we'd be looking at something beautiful. The art is a 5. The art isn't bad to look at, and David dares playing with styles and colors to fit the story, which is commendable. Everything else, however, is mediocre at best, and sometimes the grittiness becomes a little too gritty, leaving the reader unable to tell who is who and what is going on. The characters are a 2. Think about this for a second. The random people you meet throughout the comic that never shows up again are better characters than the main characters. The characters honestly feels like a mistake in the idea that the concept of them was solid, but everything in the execution went wrong. All in all, this comic is a 2. Once again, let me remind you, the final score is how enjoyable it is to read, and with all these things taken into consideration. It might have some okay art, but the premise and characters more than helps sink this shit to hell where it belongs. I could go on another fucking hour if you let me talking about how shitty this webcomic is, but I'm not that into self-mutilation. Fuck! I'll see you guys in the next webcomic relief. Take care.
Yeah.